We're here with Richard Campbell at his place, and there's like a bunch of mango trees in this little area. Of course, there's a lot of other wonderful trees too, but I think the mango trees are probably what people would like to hear about.
Right, and actually the only correction is none of these are mango trees.
Oh.
These are all different species of Mangiferas.
They're cousins.
Yes, these are all cousins. So what we did is, in my years at Fairchild as a plant collector, you know, we were trying to collect, there are 70 edible cousins of mangoes out there, and probably more than that. But in doing that work, what we figured out was some of them have never left the jungle for a reason. Right. This is all my interpretation of what I learned in 30 years of my life. Okay?
Very specific environment that they can grow in.
They're very specific. They've fruited once in the last 5 generations, things like this, right? They fruit every 150 years.
Oh,
right?
Perfect.
Things of legend, things that make great stories that you can build, that indigenous peoples can build their lore around, and they can make it their mother tree, and so that some idiotic
they have a festival whenever they finally get fruit.
Right. And then, you know, that's going to be the whole change of the millennium and the whole thing and all those sort of things. All of that stuff that you saw in Avatar that Cameron stole from the idea of indigenous peoples, by the way, of a mother tree and all that, you can find all those with the Mangifera species in Borneo, okay? So that's what we were doing. We went over there and tried to collect all this stuff. And what I found with that, first of all, is that first of all, we didn't know what they grafted on, okay? They're not mangoes. So can we use mango rootstocks? Who knew? Secondly, are they cold hardy enough to live here? You know, there's just a million questions that we did it. So after 30 years of collecting, we ended up with about 20 species that we were able to establish here in South Florida. And that's what you're actually looking at. There's 20 trees, 20 Mangifera species right here that are growing in here. You can't see those because the other stuff is too small, or is still too small. So if you look, this is where I do not recommend, this is how you plant trees, but
it's recreating the jungle atmosphere.
You have to do things when you leave places and you need to plant things and you don't have endless resources and all these sort of things. So I do a lot of stuff that are not
conventional.
Or the most logical horticultural way to do it, okay? So like this is a grafted species right there. That's a Lalajiwo. This one right behind you here, this is Mangifera minor, and this one this one here comes from Papua New Guinea. Now what makes this very interesting is this tree was growing with its roots in salt water, and I kid you not. I mean, we collected this, I cut the budwood of this tree right here off of a tree whose entire root system was in the ocean.
I think Pine Island would be interested in that.
A lot of people would be very interested in this. So
especially after Hurricane Ian.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so these are the thing. This one here, this little guy right here that we planted, this one is, see, just down here and recently grafted. That is from peninsular Malaysia. And that is, wow, Mangifera, I'll think of it in a second. It's not altissima, it's, anyway. This one is one of the prettiest Mangiferas you've ever seen. Very, very productive, but the fruit are about that big and are more acid than a lime. I mean, they are incredibly acidic, but completely tolerant to anthracnose and to powdery mildew. So why?
Did you try the fruit? I mean, is it decent if you're looking for sour? Or?
If you're looking for a lime, it's perfect. Yes, I love it. I love to eat these. Actually, it's one of my favorite. We call this one karak because it was. We actually got the tree. We got the budwood off of a gas station in Karak, Peninsular Malaysia, which is right outside of Kuala Lumpur. And what makes these important is, more than anything, is these are what will allow is what will allow us to make a genetic map that will then allow for DNA assisted breeding of mangoes in the future. So if you're going to make new mango varieties for the industry, which the whole world needs, you need to have a map. Everyone else, apples, pears, plums, grapes, everyone else in the world, all the other industries in the world who are moving into the modern world, understand that you have to do DNA assisted breeding, because that's the only way to get
the characteristics,
you want, adapted to the right place for the new environment we all live in, all that kind of stuff, right? So the idea that mangoes, commercial mangoes around the world, they use a growth regulator in order to make them bloom. Because they're Florida varieties grown in the tropics, right? And they're not adapted to places that don't have cold. So they use a chemical in order to make it bloom. And the mango industry thinks they don't need an answer.
Yeah, that's good enough.
That's good enough. Well, it's not good enough. That's ridiculous. Okay, again, I don't use anything to make my mango trees bloom. Instead, I bred varieties that will bloom with our climate. But our climate will change.
Yes.
And things don't bloom anymore, some of the things. Some years we don't have good blooming in Florida on Florida varieties that were selected in the 50s or 40s or 30s or whatever, because it was colder then, right? So with a genetic map, you have to use these species, and with these species you can identify genetic traits like powdery mildew tolerance, anthracnose tolerance. One of the most exciting ones in here is there's a couple of these species that turn from green, and when they ripen, they turn red. But it's not the sun. It's a different pathway. It's truly red ripening color.
Well, that would be popular.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. Now, again, for me and you, I don't care.
Right. Yeah.
I don't care. What does it matter to me? I don't. A yellow mango is a great mango, but
eye candy.
That's right. Eye candy in a world that always is looking for this kind of stuff. It's perfect. So what this is this is kind of the Noah's Ark of the Mangifera species that we then are doing the genetic studies in order to come up with that DNA map. And by the way, I'm not, Men Homestead is not the one doing the DNA map. I'm not a geneticist, okay? But what we are protecting are the actual trees, or is the material.
Right.
Because
do you send some of this out, or do they get it sourced from other areas?
So this is we hold these varieties between here, and then we also have in Puerto Rico. And that's the two places we have them. And now National Mango Board is actually doing the first of the genetic studies to work on this DNA map, because we've done reciprocal crosses of these things, and that's where and we've also made crosses with Mangifera indica, with good mangoes.
Right.
And that's where our wangos came from. So these are the parents of our wangos, our interspecific hybrids. And the wangos, which we've already started to select, those are what you use to actually analyze to figure out the genetics to make this genetic map. And so meanwhile, while the rest of the world is creating a genetic map to breed new varieties, we're selecting the progeny, we're selecting these wangos, and I have 15 of them right over here. And the good news, by the way, because all that makes a wango will be a cross of this Mangifera minor with a Mangifera indica, a good parent, which we assume was a good parent. They were caged. We put bees in there, they crossed, and we planted the progeny, the seeds, and then we selected high quality varieties out of that, or high eating fruit out of that.
So how long does it take for you to get from an idea of what cross would be interesting to tasting the fruit of something that might be good?
I'll tell you how long it took, 30 years. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
so I've either wasted my life.
Yes.
I could have wasted my life, or maybe we've changed the world. It's one of the two. And you know what? I'm okay with either way.
But you have these trees here.
Yeah.
And so they've been fruiting. At least some of them have.
No,
been
these have all fruited, and these are just young trees of them.
Okay, so if you were dealing with this, you don't have to go and get the actual plants.
Right.
You've already got them established here, and you think, oh, I wonder what what fruit would be produced by this tree as a pollinating parent, and we'll put another tree in a cage, and you get. So how long from that stage to getting the fruit?
It'd still be about 25 years, because you're really going to have to. Maybe shorter. Okay, let's say 15 years. If you were really efficient and you really did a good job of it, you could say 15 years. The real problem is a lot of these trees, what we're really talking about is a point in time, right? It was a point in time. When we started collecting Mangifera species, there were only there were actually 2 Mangifera species grown, let's say 3 grown in the United States at that time, in South Florida. Those were Mangifera odorata, the Kowini, that everybody had, brought in by David Fairchild many years ago, back in 1902. And then you had Mangifera zeylanica, which was from the Seychelles Islands, and that was brought in by the USDA back in 1920, something like that. And then you had one other species that was brought in by the USDA. That was it. And that's all that had been brought in. So we brought in, when I was at Fairchild Garden, we brought in another 25 species that we were able to, we brought in a lot more than that, but we got grafted and established trees going of those. And now I will tell you the very interesting thing that we learned on some of those things. Some of those species have never bloomed here. They don't bloom here because it's too cold.
Yeah.
And there is no cold requirement in many of the Mangifera species. None, zero. In fact, it's just the opposite. They don't want it to get cold. So again, that's an opportunity. And it also identifies, it's more than just they won't bloom when there's no cold. They just won't bloom even when it's warm this far north in latitude. So it's probably a day length thing. Because one of the things we talk about with mangoes is no one ever talks about day length, and they should. Because
well, it seems like people would have create a situation with artificial light or something if that's the case.
You would think, but I will tell you that It's just like when we started this. I mean, look, 30 some years ago when I started collecting Mangifera species, honestly, you could find no information on it, nothing. It's all, had to write the book. We wrote the book on it, right? We didn't actually write a book, we did it. Here's one right over here you see, by the way.
Yeah, I've seen the flowers.
And this one has set some fruit.
Oh yeah.
And it's
Here and there.
this is actually a variety from, or this is a species out of Cambodia, and this is actually Mangifera altissima, which is weird that it has the name altissima out of Cambodia, but it also comes out of the Philippines.
Top of a hill.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it's set. I've never actually, I have not had this species yet. This is one of the ones that hasn't fruited before.
Oh, well, that's fun.
Yeah, so it's kind of neat. And all these things, you know, they take, these are older trees than they look. So this is not, by the way, the rootstock this is used, this is actually grafted on an inner stock. So you have Mangifera indica down here, and then you have a different species in the middle, which I believe was Lalajiwo. I would have to look back at the map. And then you have the altissima grafted here.
So do you need to do all the different varieties because this would not grow in the soils that we have here?
It wouldn't grow in the soil, and it wouldn't graft on indica. It doesn't graft on indica. A lot of these don't graft on indica. So if you look here, here's another one from the Papua New Guinea, and I had to give this thing a nurse.
Yeah, I see. That's an odd graft. It's like a stilt. But
Yeah, because what was happening, this tree was actually dying, and on this rootstock, and I had to give it a stilt to try to give it enough.
Is this like another variety then?
It's another species.
It's not indica, and this is indica, and
right. And I was able to get this to live, and now it's given some energy to this. It's still very small.
Well, that is very cool.
And we, this is one of the things we do when, you know, you get a tree girdled and stuff. You can save a tree that way too, inarch it like that. But this is inarching, saving it from its incompatibility. And because you can see how this thing sucks in. You see how?
Yeah.
It's weird, right? And that's the thing, all this stuff we don't know. We don't really know. Well, this is actually a good variety, or a good species. I like this species too. So this is one that they actually use the leaves as a spice.
So the fruit is really not used then over?
You use it, but it's almost skin. It's skin and stone. Really, there's nothing else on it. It's hardly anything to eat, and they honestly use it as a spice. A spice, and it's another one that is very, very salt tolerant. You know, it grows, because I mean, we're talking about these little islands. I mean, these are little tiny islands, and they have constant salt, and yeah, there's nothing else there. So
yeah, I'm sure there's encroachment into the water table and stuff from the ocean.
Exactly. And then this one over here, this used to be the biggest Mangifera sold in all of Singapore. This is Mangifera aplanata. I'm sorry, that one, no. That's aplanata. No, hold on, I'm getting mixed up. This is Mangifera laurina, that's aplanata.
All right.
Okay. And so this is what they would sell all over Singapore back 200 years ago. So 200 years ago, this was the biggest mango-like fruit sold. This was called Mangifera, and this was sold all over Malaysia, Indonesia. Now it's, you know, mostly gone, but and it's a decent fruit. but it, you know, not as good as our modern varieties, but
Yeah.
but it has tolerance to, I mean, if this thing blooms and it'll bloom and set like that, it doesn't have any disease problems.
So one of the things I wonder about, and I just haven't researched it at all and don't have any experience in it, but with the salt-tolerant varieties, if you use that as rootstock, will the salt be taken up by the root and kill the top if the top is not salt-tolerant?
No, never been a, no, that doesn't normally happen, and that's why if we can find a salt-tolerant rootstock, that's why something like this or the other one would probably become very useful as rootstocks.
Oh, yeah.
And, but again, it's just like any of this stuff, there's different mechanisms of salt, right? And so that becomes a real issue too. So it depends. I mean, sometimes you can have salt that travels, and you know, you also have a difference between salt spray and salt on the roots.
Yeah. So anyway, basically, you've got all these neat cousins of our cultivated mango, and it's sort of an ongoing learning experience slash experiment.
Correct, and then it'll continue on that way, and we'll fill this whole place in with those, and then their progeny we have over there that are going into our orchard.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. And then the newest expansion, so this is 1.25 acres, this property. And the newest expansion will be over to here. And this is where our wangos are going to be planted. And this was, again, to give you the idea that I cut them off and then I'll have to grub these stumps, right? And it's just a lot of work. But this way I'm not poisoning anything. It also, I leave the hammock area for our bees, and I have 15 wangos that are already propagated, ready to go in here, and it's going to expand out this way, and then eventually I'll take it on out into there in another year.
Yeah, it's like.
But so that's what the backyard looked like when we started, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's great if you don't want to have food, grow food.
Right. The reason that I wanted to show you this area is because the wangos, in 30 years, I'll predict that that'll be the standard for mango industry. We'll be growing interspecific hybrids. They won't be pure mangoes anymore, because the interspecific hybrids have so much potential for disease tolerance, color, blooming, flavors. So one of the interesting theories that I have is all of these wangos that we have are all heavy into the coconut, the citrus, the pineapple flavors. All of the newer mangoes that we love so much, right? All of these wangos have that flavor. There's a lot of pina colada-ness to them. None of them taste like Kent's. None of them. And I don't know if this is just chance, or because we have not, in all the ones we evaluated last year, and we just started evaluating these last year. That was our first year of seeing these crosses, right? And we didn't find a single one that tasted like a Kent. Everything, and some of them are mind-blowing in their flavor. I mean, mind-blowing. And so it's very exciting, right? It is on the ground floor of making of, you know, if you want to take the analogy of the temperate fruit world of making pluots and in citrus, you know, citrange quats and all that kind of stuff, right? It'll be very interesting, you know. I don't know where the road will end, but I can tell you where it started, and it's exciting. It's unbelievable, really.